the hand is actually going to be split into two areas, our fingers and our thumb. Now, the beginning point of our fingers are going to start right where our finger actually meets the hand. And this area is right here. The thumb is actually going to start up here and then come down, then go across like this and then do something like that. But we'll come to the thumb in a second. So remember, we're trying to get our joints to be in the middle of the finger as much as possible, kind of like you're threading a pipe cleaner down through a pipe. So I'm going to go into my joint tool and we're going to draw 3 joints. We're going to say, or draw 1, 2, 3, 4 joints out. So let's actually open up our quad view and we're going to do this from the top. Actually, I'm going to do this from the side. I'll make it a little bit easier on the front. And I'm just going to click and draw a joint and try to get it as center as possible. And I'm just going to hold shift and I'm going to draw straight out. Like that. Okay. So I got my 4 joints drawing straight out. And I can position this a little bit, but it's going to be really hard to tell. And I know one thing, if I go in the top view, this is not going to be in the right area. So let's look at our other views here. You can see our top view. That's completely correct on here. So I can bring this over and kind of bring it into position. Now, because the hand is actually tilted down, this is going to cause problems. So we're going to have to actually use all 4 views to really get this right, including our perspective view. And that's going to have to take a lot of caution with using that. So I can rotate our finger out like this. And we're going to be using a lot of Translate X to move these joints around. Okay, so our finger's in position, and I do need to rotate it down like so. And like I said, we're trying to get them centered as much as possible. Now, they're pretty high up on the finger, so I'm just going to now translate it down like that. Okay, so I am going to jump to our perspective view. And if I jump around a little bit too much here, you'll have to bear with me because you are going to be zipping back and forth between all the 4 views on this. Okay, so now right now it doesn't look like our finger here is in the right position. It looks like it needs to come up a little bit because you see how we have these 3 rings right here, like click, 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 and we want it to be in the middle of those. So that looks fine. I'm going to hit F and just kind of center on it like so. But you can see how in just a little bit of view it looks like it's the fingers moving around. So we're going to have to do a lot of positioning. Now the great thing she did when this was modeled, she modeled the fingers straight, which is not your actually relaxed state in your fingers, but for a rigging standpoint, curved fingers make a much more difficult character to lay out joints for, and we can always curl them later when we actually set them for the animator. So I'm just translating down on the x-axis my second joint, and I have right here, and this one's actually a little hard to see, but you can see this little divot coming up like that. That's our edge flow for our finger. That's where we need to have it. So I'm going to translate it back a little bit. I'm kind of keeping my eye on my Y and Z's, because if you see any values pop up there, I'll just delete them. And let's translate back my end, and I will have it make sure it's sticking inside the skin. Okay, and that actually looks pretty good. We got a straight line. It's centered in the middle of the finger. And there we go. Now, the rest of the fingers are actually pretty easy. But before I move on to that, I want to check my orientation. Now, we see how our joints are actually facing up like this. Now, we want to make sure that our joints are actually oriented with our fingers. Now, your hand is actually going to curl. It's going to curve, sorry, like that. So our orientation needs to match. Now, it doesn't look like much, but it's a little off, like that. And it should be, it's almost like if you're cutting right down the middle of the finger. Actually, it's like that. So this axis needs to go up and down like this right on that line. The thing is, it's going to change when we go across to our other fingers. Like this one's going to be a little bit more out like this. And then this finger here is going to be, you know, it's weird. The edge flow is a little bit disobeying that, but this one's actually going to be a little bit more out like that. Okay. So now that we have our first joint set up, we can literally just duplicate. So I'm going to hit Command D and just translate it over like that. Now you're going to have to make sure your positioning is really solid, because moving it back, moving it over is not going to put it in the exact correct position. Okay, so I'll move my finger so it's straight, and I realize I need to move it over a little bit more. Okay, rotate it down so it's straightened. It's in the middle, and I got my first joint in there, and then we can check to see if our second joint is correct. It looks like it needs to be brought up a little bit. Probably means my fingers are not, I probably could bring up the whole system here. But no, it looks like it does need to come up. So maybe a little bit in the root, and then bring up my second finger. And that should kind of line them up, because most likely she duplicated the fingers as well. Remember to check the bottom, it should be a little bump right there. Okay. Probably could have been brought up a little bit more. Translate it down. Okay. This is one of those you have to make sure. You see how it's not really facing in the right direction. Okay. Okay, and I duplicate and bring it over again. Okay, I move it out like that. I have to translate my finger down. Go. Rotate it. Just trying to get that right in the middle. Okay. Good. Now I just make sure my second digit is connected. That looks pretty good. My third digit needs to come up. Like that. Make sure our ends are inside. Like that. There we go. We got our fingers here. So we're just about to freeze these out. Okay. So let's go ahead and clean these up, and then we'll move on to the thumb next. So make sure that we got our values and they're clean. There's only translate X. Okay, moving up and down, and only translate X. So okay, these look like good to be frozen. I can also see that the orientation is clean, because I can see my move axis is Y up and Z forward, and since I duplicated, I know that they're all the same like that. So now I can select all three of these and just freeze them. Modify freeze transforms, and we can go in and we can name these. So it's going to be our left index 01 bind. This will be our middle left middle 01 bind. Then our left pinky 01 bind. And that will obviously go off into pinky 02 bind, pinky 03 bind, and then waist. Oops, missed my left. Okay. Okay, and now all our criteria, our position is good, our orientation are good, Our values are clean on our joints. Our root only has our translates, and our children only have translate x. And our naming is set up. And our next phase will be to do the thumb.